You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Greeks Gridiron. I'm Ethan Haristadoulou, and today on this beautiful Sunday for Week 3 of the NFL season, we are previewing Monday night's football action. As a reminder, we're doing this before the Sunday slate of games. As I'm recording this right now, it's about 11:30 a.m. Eastern, so games have not kicked off yet. That being said, we got some football to talk here. Monday night action, Ravens, Lions, should be a really good contest. So as always, I invite you all, comment down below. Let me hear from you. Your thoughts, your opinions on the matchup, who's going to come out on top. This one feels like there could be a lot of points to it, so I think there is plenty to discuss and look at and get into. So as always, fire away and let me hear from you. But Monday Night Football, we're looking at these Ravens, we're looking at these Lions, and both of these teams coming off of smashing their division rivals. Baltimore burying Cleveland in the second half of their matchup, and then Detroit kind of ran away with the game pretty early on and just did not let up the gas, dropping 52 points on Ben Johnson and his Chicago Bears. Both these teams now 1-1 after starting out the season 0-1, so some much-needed victories and some dominant victories at that. And honestly, both sides needing that type of momentum going into a matchup where both of these teams are very good football teams, well-respected football teams, and you want to feel good about yourselves when you're going up against essentially a headliner from the opposite conference here. Prove-it game, if you will, for both sides. That being said, I think, as it always does with Baltimore, we got to start with Detroit's ability to potentially slow down Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Detroit right now, as it currently stands, ranks 7th in the NFL, according to Next Gen Stats, in run stuff rate, so either runs going for no gain and or a loss of yards, which is a pretty good number, all things considered. And they also are only giving up a respectable about 106 yards per game through the first 2 weeks of the season. And obviously Baltimore, they love to run the football. They love to play the read option game with Derrick Henry and with Lamar Jackson. And the key is, of course, as always, to contain Lamar. Derrick Henry is going to get his touches. He's tough to bring down, although Cleveland did a pretty solid job of slowing him down last week after talking some trash going through the week into the lead up of week number 2. Cleveland ended up somehow managing to hold Baltimore to just 45 yards rushing. So it is doable, and I'm assuming that Detroit is probably looking at that playbook, and whatever it was that Cleveland was drawing up, they're probably taking some inspiration from that, or at least trying their best to, because Baltimore is one of those teams where they're probably going to net somewhere around 150 to 200 yards of offense just on the ground alone between their QB and running back now, with the state of Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson being that combo in the backfield. But it'll be one of those things worth watching. I really do think, though, it comes down to ultimately just how well can you contain Lamar Jackson. Like, again, Derrick Henry's going to get his touches, and you're going to have to do what you can against him here. But it's Lamar, especially the designed runs. But, of course, when he just decides to take off and run during those pass plays where they send receivers deep downfield, things just get wide open, and there's easy lanes for him to run and rip off a good 10, 15, 20 yards. So containing Lamar will, of course, be key there. On the flip side of things, you look at Baltimore defensively, and this is just like, it's weird because this is like a recurring theme now where Baltimore comes into the season, looks really good on paper, defense should be really good, and then you ultimately come out of the gates struggling to stop the pass. Now, for what it's worth, yes, they are currently second in passing yards per game allowed through just 2 weeks of the season. Granted, the number is a little bit inflated, courtesy of Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills from week number 1 going for nearly 400 yards through the air, but they held Cleveland to a respectable 207 yards. So they're somewhere in between there, and we're still just trying to figure out what Baltimore's secondary is going to look like. But as of right now, you've got Jared Goff coming into the building, and he's coming off of a 334-yard performance where he threw for 5 touchdowns, extremely efficient at 82% completion rate. His yards per attempt averaged nearly 12 yards per completion, and I'm a little bit worried. Baltimore's secondary, a little bit banged up. We saw that, you're looking at a possibility that Nate Wiggins could potentially miss this matchup here. He's currently listed as questionable for the game. Marlon Humphrey, he's been on the injury report all week, and it sounds like he's going to play, so I think he's all right. Doesn't seem like there's anything too much to worry there, but there's always the question in the back of your mind, just how healthy is he actually? Is he really 100%, or is he, 80, 90%, where when you're dealing with a wide receiver room that boasts Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, who's arguably one of the most scary deep threats in football right now. You have an unbelievable tight end in Sam Laporta that Kyle Hamilton's going to have his hands busy on. And then, of course, you have yourself Isaac Tesla, the young upstart rookie who's had some big catches so far in his career, who looks like he is like that legit number 3 for that offense. especially with the potential of Nate Wiggins being out, which as of me recording this is not confirmed or not. I am a little bit concerned about how Baltimore fares in this game here, because it's clear over the last few years, Jared Goff, when he gets in a rhythm with this receiving group, things can get crazy pretty quickly for anyone defensively. I also have a couple of injury concerns that I think are worth highlighting for Baltimore here. We did just touch on the Nate Wiggins thing, but there are 4 players already listed as out and will not be in this matchup. Baltimore wasted no time putting this information out there. Nnamdi Madubuike and Kyle Van Noy on the defensive side of the football, and then Isaiah Likely and Patrick Rickard on the other side. These are key players for what Baltimore does, both offensively and defensively, literally week in and week out. Like, Kyle Van Noy was unbelievable for this defense last year. And I mean, Nnamdi Madubuike, he speaks for himself. I don't really need to explain him. But having both of those guys on the defensive front out for this matchup here against an offensive line that might not be quite to the level it was over the last few seasons, but is still clearly a solid group based off what they were able to do damage-wise last week to Chicago. And then Isaiah Likely, who his role has grown each and every single season and has just gotten more and more added to him every year with Baltimore. And obviously Patrick Rickard, the big man, the massive fullback when he comes in for plays for them in certain rushing formations. This is tough. And I think if you're Baltimore, you're at least glad that this game is at home, because that does help things shift in your favor a bit. But I would be a little bit concerned, or a little more concerned, because I am concerned, but I would be even more concerned if this was a road game and you're missing all these key players, both offensively and defensively. Just not the greatest thing to have going on into week number 3 against a high-octane offense and a high-octane opponent overall who could put up numbers, and you need to either A, try to slow them down, or B, try to keep up depending on how the game shakes itself out. And it sounds like, based off of, and again, not a better, no gambling advice here, but I did take a look at the over-under for this one because I was curious, and the fact that that number is nearly 54 points right now, it seems like we're going to get a lot of offense here, so you want to be able to have as many guys available for you in this matchup here. There are some questionables for Detroit, but they look like they're going to be pretty healthy coming into this one here. There's nobody that, based off of just the way the injury report kind of shook itself out and the way practices happened this week, there's anyone too key that might miss this matchup here, like Marcus Davenport's out, but beyond that, I feel pretty good about the health of Detroit coming into this matchup. So definitely some injury concerns for Baltimore here. All of that being said, though, I mean, it's Monday Night Football. It's in prime time. I think we're going to get a really good matchup with this one, and I buy the idea of potentially high points. Like I mentioned with the secondary in Baltimore, and obviously what we've seen from Detroit so far, the defense is still in a bit of a way working itself out, and I do think a really good team in Baltimore can take advantage of that. There's going to be points here. It's going to be fireworks. This will be one of those Monday Night Football games that are well worth staying up for, and while you look at what Vegas is trying to say about who the odds-on favorite is, I think this is a very, very close contest here where these two teams are going to be hucking touchdowns, whether it's through the air or pounding the rock on the ground. There's going to be points in this one here. As for who I think is going to come out on top, though, by a hair, and this is one of those just kind of gut feelings, I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens on this one. I very, very heavily consider Detroit, especially with all of the injury concerns that I have and the amount of guys that are going to be missing action for Baltimore. But in Baltimore right now, with that current situation, I feel really good. And the other thing is that through 2 weeks of play, we've seen Baltimore lose right at the end of a game in week number 1 and ultimately smash a far lesser opponent in week number 2. Whereas when you look at what Detroit did last week, impressive, 52 points. They still let up 21, though, to a Chicago Bears team that I'm really starting to fade already. And then the week prior, looked like they could not hang with some of the more elite teams in the NFL, in the Green Bay Packers, and I consider Baltimore to be up there in that elite conversation. So I think Baltimore's the better team here. Yes, I think the injuries make things a little bit closer than Baltimore would like it to be, but at home, this is a good opportunity, a statement win after what was a tough loss week 1 and a great bounce back in week number 2. I think the Baltimore Ravens get it done. But all that being said, comment down below. Let me hear from you. Thoughts, opinions on the matchup. Again, who do you think is going to come out victorious in this one here? Fire away in that comment section. But as always, if you made it to the end, I greatly appreciate it. And I will see you all on Tuesday for power rankings, the tier list, and ranking all those teams from 32 to 1.